Hello. I'm just waiting to double check on the audio, and then we will start. This should be a fairly short stream today. Hello. Okay. That was me watching me. Okay. Let me close that out so I don't cause any issues. Good afternoon or good morning or whatever time of day it is, wherever you are. This is going to be a relatively short video, like I said at the top of the video. I've been kind of busy preparing a video to come out soon about the taking photos of the total solar eclipse. I'm not gonna. I don't have much to talk about today. Well, I do, but I didn't prepare enough. And also, it's been cloudy here, so I haven't had time to do a few of the things I wanted to talk about. But that required me to be out observing. And so I did get a little bit of data. I did get a little bit of observing time last night with the Orion Nebula and the NGC 4216, where that supernova was. But I noticed it looked like it already had faded in the last couple of weeks. And when I looked at, there's a website, I'll link it in the description after the video, but hold on a second. I always end up accidentally dismissing the wrong window. Yeah, so this website has information about the supernovas, which is kind of interesting. So you can, this is actually specifically about the 4216 supernova, but then it links to this website that just has way too much information about it. It actually has like every recent supernova over, and then it has a highlight of the ones that are over the 17th magnitude. And this NGC 4216 one it's already faded at least a magnitude. I was wanting to photograph the NGC 3206 because that's the brightest one right now, but I think I had started it but didn't get enough data from it. But it's kind of a little interesting thing if you want, some other kind of targets to take a photo of. It's kind of cool. On that NGC 3206 supernova is still brightening apparently, so that's cool. So like I was saying at the beginning, this total solar eclipse is only 5 weeks away, and because of the timeliness, I'd been kind of focused for the last few days on eclipse-related things. I wanted to come out with at least a video or two. I had been in the process of creating a very kind of overly ambitious video, I think, and I just I didn't have the it was too much to do in one video. So I'm going to break it into multiple videos, and the first one that's going to come out is on taking a photo of the eclipse. So look for that soon, very soon. But I thought, since I was kind of in that headspace, and since it's barely a month away, I would kind of look at some eclipse-related stuff real quickly today on the stream, and not about photographing, but some of the things related to the eclipse path, but also the weather prognosis, like looking at climate-related things. I thought this was kind of an interesting article I'd run across, that the national app, the NOAA, which does a lot of the weather forecasting, They've integrated solar eclipse into solar eclipses into their model because the temperature can drop 10 degrees, up to 10 degrees in the center of the eclipse, and that does have an effect on the weather locally. So I thought that was kind of interesting that they've added that to their model. But then in the specific case of this eclipse map, you know, if you're planning on seeing the eclipse and you're not sure if you're going to go somewhere, or you don't know how much eclipse you're going to see where you are, I would strongly recommend looking at this map or a similar map sooner rather than later, because it's relatively simple once you see how to read it, and it's very useful if you're near the path of totality and you just kind of want to see how far you need to go or where you need to go, and maybe having a plan B if your plan A doesn't work out. But basically, dark strip is totality. These lines within totality indicate how long it is. In the center of totality, near the Texas-Mexico border, it's about 4.5 minutes long. But as you kind of head up to the northeast, by the time you get to the Ohio area, it drops under 4. The maximum eclipse drops under 4 minutes. It's still not too bad. It's still longer than the eclipse was in 2017. That one was like 2.5 minutes. So it's still better than that. But it shows that you can see on this that if you're within kind of this central band of totality, you get 4 minutes or more. But if you're towards the edge, it kind of drops off. It might be 3 minutes. It might be, and if you're right at the edge, you might only see it for a moment. So it's worth kind of moving into the band as close to the center as you can get. But basically, it's gonna the shadow. The circle is where the moon's shadow will be at that point in time. And so, yeah, it starts around 1:30 daylight time. I'm not going to go over all the specifics, but basically it goes over, kind of grazes San Antonio and Austin. Goes the central part is over Waco, kind of goes through the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, Texarkana, and it goes, I'll just go ahead and Indianapolis is right on the center line, but you can see that the 4-minute band is kind of tapering off here, and it's just left with 3-minute band up here by the Great Lakes, and Buffalo, New York is right on the center line. If it's clear, that it's going to be really spectacular, I think, because Niagara Falls is right in that zone. I have a feeling some people are going to get some cool photos if it's clear up there. And then it kind of goes all the way up to the northeast. But then if you're not going to go to the center line, you can look at, these bands and get an idea of how full it'll be. I mean, anything over probably 80% will be it'll definitely be noticeable. It'll get noticeably darker and a little cooler. And then by the time you get up to the very and then like Houston is going to be 90 the western suburbs of Houston will be like 95%, so it'll just be a fairly thin crescent. Hello, Tom. This is I'm also in I'm in Houston area, so hello. But yeah, so it's going to be interesting in Texas. But so even though the path of totality, like the maximum totality, is in Texas, and it's pretty decent across big swath of the U.S. I kind of had alluded to this in a previous video. The weather is ultimately the kind of the most crucial thing. I mean, it doesn't matter how long the eclipse is if it's cloudy. As a matter of fact, I've had problems with clouds. I shouldn't say problems with clouds. There've been clouds at every eclipse I've been to. And not completely cloudy, but the first eclipse I went to, the first eclipse I saw, there were kind of intermittent clouds on the partial phases up to totality, and then at totality, it was completely clear. I mean, it cleared up around the sun, and then afterwards, clouds went back over the sun. But it was at that, and it was like cloudy for the rest of the last half of the eclipse after totality, luckily. But I remember there were several people there that had been to eclipses before then, and there was one fellow. He had gone to the Aleutian Islands up in Alaska back in the, I don't even remember if it was in the 70s or 80s, and it was completely cloudy, and so we were asking him, like, how was that? You know, you fly all the way to like a remote area of Alaska, and you see the clouds. I mean, you get clouded out. And he said he was in a bar watching the clouds get really dark. So he completely missed it. I mean, he got to see it get like nighttime in the middle of the day, but so it can really, you know, it can definitely. I mean, the good thing is, it can really cause disruptions, but then the good thing is, since this path is going across the United States, it's easy to kind of, if you're flexible, to drive somewhere else if things don't turn out. But I thought I started looking into it, and I remember people have been talking about, I've seen several people online who are coming to Texas specifically because within the United States, Texas has the best odds of good weather, especially more towards the Mexico border there. It's I think the edge of the Edwards Plateau, so it's like a drier area. And but there's other factors as well. So I thought I'd kind of bring up this website, and I've showed this on a previous video. Let me enlarge the text. But I've showed this on a previous video, but it's worth kind of, I'm not going to go over all the details. It's amazing how rigorous people are. But they looked at the climatological history of, you know, April 8th, and, you know, what the weather is usually like. And this specifically is an interesting chart right here. I'll link it. I'll link this whole article in the description after the video, but this is the average April cloud amount along the central line from the entire path. So this includes all the way from Mexico, from Mazatlan, which funny enough, that was actually where I went to for the first eclipse I ever saw, was Mazatlan, Mexico. That's another story for another day, but yeah, you can see, so the best odds of cloud cover are in kind of some arid areas in western Mexico, and it goes up, but it's still, you know, like here Uvalde is, you know, in Texas, so you can see that it really is. It's kind of in Texas. It's some of the lowest. It's some of the best odds, the lowest cloud cover percentage on the entire path within the United States. And there's some interesting dips here, and the article kind of goes into the details of why there are these dips. Like some of them have to do with mountain ranges or the Great Lakes, or kind of coastal transition areas, like this area up here by New Brunswick, where, you know, things, you know, the clouds, because of prevailing winds, it might be cloudy just inland, but then as soon as you get offshore, it's more likely to be a little bit more clear, kind of maritime weather effect. So the article goes into a lot more detail about it. But the other thing that I found interesting about this article, that is positive, at least for Texas, potentially, is El Nino. And we're going into, we're still in El Nino, I think, although I believe it might start dissipating, or it has started dissipating. But one of the side effects of El Nino is it's more likely to be clear. This is what it's showing. The positive, the blue tones are lower probability of clouds on El Nino years. So you can see most of Texas, according to this, on average would have fewer clouds on El Nino when El Nino was in effect, which is good, which is great news. But again, we won't know until we're closer to the eclipse. So yeah, this is kind of interesting. Yeah, so in Mexico, here's Mazatlan, and if I recall correctly, the eclipse I went to, Mazatlan was like also almost directly on the center line. The path was completely different. That eclipse went over the Hawaiian island, went over Hawaii, and then hit the coast of Mexico. So it didn't go over the continental U.S. at all, which is why I ended up in Mexico. This was a long time ago. We won't talk about how long ago it was, and you could look it up. But yeah, this is an interesting article, and it kind of gives an idea. And then it gets into like the prevailing jet stream and stuff like that, which can affect fronts, and it gets into, what do you call it? Somewhere down here. Let me see. It gets into the chances of severe weather. Yeah, so this is interesting from Texas. So it breaks it down by area, by region. And you can see, again, it's from Texas to Missouri, some of the best areas are kind of out there. Kerrville, Junction, those are out west of San Antonio, just a little bit west of San Antonio. So kind of in that central, kind of in, let me see, like Junctions in kind of somewhere, it's on I-10, so it's like somewhere around here, I think. So it shows that Junction seems like a reasonable place. But yeah, anyway, it's kind of, I'll link to it in the description because it's worth a look. Here it shows, because in the spring, a lot of times there's fronts coming through and unstable air masses, and so it shows April tornadoes, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, this is definitely a highly recommend. Now that we're about 5 weeks away, if you haven't looked at this or something like this, you should look at it just to get an idea of what the odds are and what you're up against. Like if you're in Maine, you might see it, but there's also a strong chance that it's going to be cloudy. That said, yeah, you just never know. I mean, like I say, I've actually there was one eclipse where there were high clouds, and we were still able to see it, like cirrus clouds, and even during totality, you were able to see the moon, the sun just fine, the corona of the sun just fine. So it's like you just never know. But I would recommend looking at that, knowing what areas, what things look like, and then once you get down to 10 days before the eclipse, I'll be mentioning it again, I'm sure, because I'm monitoring this. But as you get closer to the date of the eclipse, so like towards late March, the long range forecast, it starts getting into that 10-day window when things are not completely fictional. only somewhat fictional. And then as it gets closer, you kind of have better idea. So what time is the eclipse? It depends on where you are in, so on this map here, so the circle is literally kind of the shadow of the moon. And so at 1:30 Central Daylight Time, the moon's shadow is right there. And it goes across the U.S. pretty quickly. So it's 1:30 p.m. in April, April 8th, is when it gets to the U.S. The partial phases will have started about an hour before. So if you go look up, I think it's maybe more than an hour before, hour and I forget. But if you look like up here in, northern New Hampshire, and it's at 3:30 p.m. Eastern time. So about an hour after it got to the Texas border, because the moon's shadow is traveling at like 1,600 miles per hour. So it crosses pretty quickly, which is also why the totality lasts only a few moments, a few minutes, because it's moving at quite a good pace. But yeah, so it's going to be right in the middle of the day, which is another thing. Like if anybody watching this is coming to Texas and you're not familiar with Texas weather, bring sunscreen. Because like the UV index here the other day was like 7 or 8. And so by April it can be high already. And it was like 80. I think it's like it was 80 degrees the other day. Yeah. It's 135, 140, 145. So by 145, 150 Central Daylight Time, it's going to be exiting Texas, the shadow. So that totality will have ended everywhere in Texas by that point. And it'll continue on from there. And then over the next, 40 minutes, it'll go up to the Northeast and out to Canada. But it goes quickly. But yeah, if you're not from Texas, you definitely want to have sunscreen. But yeah, I just thought I didn't want to, like I said, I wanted this to stay short. But yeah, I'll do probably a follow-up video, like a standalone video that's maybe a little bit more tightly edited, kind of as we get closer, about where to go and other preparations you might want to make, besides just kind of the normal kind of the video I'm going to be doing about what you need to take a photo of the eclipse. But yeah, like I say, I'm not going to drag this out any further. I'm probably going to leave it at that. I'm just checking to see if any comments are coming in. But yeah, really that was all I had. So I think I will leave it at that. And if you're watching this after the fact, keep an eye out for the video about taking a photo of an eclipse. And thank you for joining, and have a good rest of your day. Thanks.